Today, we're going to find out the return risk for a single security and portfolio. What is a single security? Anything you can buy or sell individually, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. So how to evaluate the performance of a security? Typically, investors care for two things: how much return we're going to get, how much risk we have to take. For treasury bills, we understand it's safe, low risk, it has low returns. Typically, to buy stock and bond, we know there's uncertainty, we know there's risk, because we don't know the future for sure. Maybe they're going to do well tomorrow, maybe they're going to do poorly tomorrow. Luckily, we have so many professionals devoted time forecasting the future economy for us. For example, so you were told there are two stocks, C and T. Under future economy, if economy improves, boom economy, they're going to perform better. Under recession, they're doing poorly. And we also know how likely we're going to hit a boom, normal, a recession economy. Notice we only assume three possible economies. The total probability of hitting one of them is 100%. So let's first think about expected return. For example, you are throwing heads or tail. 50 chance you got heads, 50 chance got tail. Heads mean winning $10, tail lose $20. So the expected gain or loss we are looking at is 50% chance, $10, 50% chance, lose $20. We on average lose $5. Here, you notice the expected return does not necessarily equal one of the possible return in the future. That is the negative $5, not necessarily the same as possible $10 or lose $10. To find out expected return, we typically going to consider both the possibility of future economy, how likely we're going to hit a boom or recession, and also the returns under each economy. So let's see one examples. To find out expected return for C, for each of economy, we use probability 0.3, 30% chance we hit a boom, multiply the stock return of 15% under this economy. Then we go on repeat for other two economy. Under normal economy, 50% chance we will hit this economy, and C will give us 10% returns. Same thing, 20% chance we hit a recession, and we only get 2%. So this will give us expected return for C equal to 9.9%. So let's practice to find out expected return for T. 30% chance we have a 25 return, 50, 20, 20%, 1. So this equals 0.3 times 25 plus 0.5 times 20 plus 0.2 times 1. The answer is 17.7%. Important concept for performance of security is risk. How much risk we are taking. So there are two measures to measure the risk. Variance, standard deviations. Basically, we're going to capture the volatility of the performance away from the expected returns. For example, suppose expected return is 10%. and the chance we may hit high or low. Right. So we're going to look at the distance from the expected return and add up. So to do this, for each economy, we look at the actual predicted return, how much is distance from expected return. As there's up the positive or negative deviations, we take a square to capture this effect. Lastly, we adjust with probability of this economy. Let's look at the previous example. We already got expected return for C and T is 9.9, 17.7%. So to find out the variance and the standard deviation for C, first we're going to find out for each economy how much is distance and then take a square. So we use 0.15, subtract expected return 0.99, then take a square, multiply the probability of this economy. Then we repeat the same procedure for normal economy and boom. Once we got the variance, we can take a square root of this one to get standard deviation. So let's practice for stock T. First, focus on boom economy. Probability is 30%. Return is 25, away from 17.7. Take a square, then continue. Normal economy, 10%. Sorry, 20%. 20% minus 7.7. Lastly, recession, 1% away from 17.7 square. You do have to practice, use your financial calculator, find out this variance. So we got the variance term as 0.007441. In the variance calculation, my advice is to keep at least 6 or more decimal places, as sometimes numbers does get small. Then we take a square root of this 0.007441. We got the standard deviation is 8.63. Here, I listed another example for your practice. So, one single security, we have 3 economy, probability, and return under each economy. So, I want you to practice, find out expected return for this stock and variance and standard deviation for this stock. Now, we're going to talk about the portfolio allocation and the performance of a portfolio. A lot of time, we are not happy to put our money into one stock or one bond or even one mutual fund. We like to spread across different type of assets. We want to buy different stocks or bonds or even real estate. So portfolio is basically a collection of different type of assets. Is a mutual fund a single security or a portfolio? As a mutual fund can buy and sell in the number of shares, so we can treat that as a single security. But mutual funds are managed by the portfolio manager who select stocks and bonds into this portfolio. The first thing we want to understand when we talk about portfolio is allocation. Suppose you only want to buy, say, Amazon and Apple. You only want to buy stocks, these 2 stocks, but you could have a different allocation. You could have 50% equal allocations. You could have, say, more 30% in Amazon, 70% in Apple. Even you use the same number of stocks, you could allocate the weights differently. Take a look at this example. You have stock X or Z, and you purchased 200 shares of X at $30 a piece, 100 shares of Z at $40 a piece. So how much money you allocate into stock X? How much proportion of your money into Z? So first step, we understand what's the dollar total investment in X and Z. So simply use number of shares times price per share. We invested 6,000 in X and 4,000 in Z. Our total portfolio value is 10,000. So this implies portfolio weight in X is 60%. The rest must be 40% in Z. Now, we care about performance of this portfolio. How much return we're going to get? How much risk we're going to take? For portfolios returns, there are two different ways. If we already know the portfolio's allocation, we already know what's the expected return for each of individual portfolio securities. We can simply use the weighted average. Alternatively, we can treat this portfolio as a single mutual fund. So what we're going to do is predict return, portfolio return under each economy, such as boom, normal, recession. Then treat this portfolio mutual fund as a single security, use the returns and the risk formula for a single security. Let's see some examples. So you have a portfolio made of stock X and Z. So we know the performance of stock X and Z under three economies. And we decided to put 60% of money into stock X, 40% of our money into stock Z. Suppose we already calculated expected return for individual stock X and Z is 10.5, 9.4. So use approach 1, we can simply use weighted average of expected returns. 60% of my money earn on average 10.5% return. 40% of my money on average earn 9.4% return. For approach 2, we're going to treat this portfolio as a single mutual fund. So the step 1, we want to understand what's portfolio's performance under boom, normal, recession. So to do this, for example, in the case of a boom economy, 60% of my money earn 15% return. 40% of my money earn 10% return, which means my portfolio will give me 13% return on the boom. Same thing, I will going to apply same procedure for normal and recession. My portfolio will earn 9.6 under normal economy, 7% in recession. Next, we're going to follow return risk for an individual security, find out portfolio's expected return. As 25% chance, we're going to hit boom, 60% normal, 15% recession. So we're going to just simply use probability, multiply portfolio return under each economy. So we got the same expected return, 10.06. To find out the portfolio variance, here we're going to follow this mutual fund approach. So what we're going to do is, once we predicted portfolio returns and solved for expected returns, we're going to use the variance for individual security formula. So basically, we look at the deviation of return from expected returns, then take square, multiply the probabilities. We do this for each economy, get the variance. Lastly, take square root. How do you feel? Now, let's take a look at one example. So you were given a portfolio. There are two possible economies, boom and bust. The portfolio is made of 3 stock A, B, C. So you're going to put 15% in A and B, 70% in C. So we find out the variance of this portfolio. To do this, first we're going to find out what is portfolio return and boom or bust. As we have 15, 70% weights, so we're going to use the weight average for that. So return equal to 0.09 times 15% plus 15% times 18 for B, then 70% times 36. Then we're going to move on for recession. Similarly, we use weights multiply the returns. So we have 15% times 15 plus 7. 15 times 7%, 70 times negative 5%. We found portfolio return and the boom is 0.2925 and the recession is negative 0.0020. Now let's use probability of the economy, multiply portfolio return and the boom and the recession, get portfolio's expected return. So we're going to use 0.6 boom times 2925 plus 0.4 times negative 0.0002. So we got expected return is 17.47%. To get variance, it's very similar. Use single securities formula. 60% is boom. We use 2925, subtract 1747 square. Then we move to 40% times negative 0.0002, subtract 1747 square. So we got the variance 0.20815. So we're done looking for variance of a portfolio. If the question asks you to solve for standard deviation, all you need to do is take a square root. So this concludes our lecture on performance of single security and portfolio. Thank you.